Welcome to Everyday Encounters. Today in our show, we're going to talk about the attachment styles, which are fearful, secure, anxious, and dismissive. Each of our interviewers are going to be interviewing someone about how these different situations reflect on their lives and their close relationships with others, and how childhood memories affected the way that they turned out and were developed. As people, we communicate through attachment styles. Especially as younger children, our parents and caregivers play a major role in adapting certain attachment styles. These attachment styles teach us how to approach relationships and how to approach others' feelings. A secure attachment style is developed when parents or caregivers are constantly loving and pay close attention to a child. For example, providing basic needs such as shelter, food, and love, and praising them for good behavior and showing interest in their life. In turn, the child develops a strong sense of self-worth, self-confidence, and has a positive view on other individuals. They gain the mindset that they are lovable and mean something to the world and plays an important part in someone's life. People with this attachment style tend to be affectionate, caring, and outgoing, and also able to deal with challenges and problems of close relationships without losing that self-confidence. As noted, those who have secure attachment styles tend to be okay when not involved in a close relationship. The security enables them to live without depending on relationships as self-worth. Here with us, we have a guest who's going to talk to us about how she believes that she has a secure attachment style and what things she went through as a little girl to make her believe that. Here with us today we have is Brittany from UT Pan America. She's here to explain to us why she believes she has a secure attachment style.
Hi, Frank.
Hi.
I'm glad to help you with this. Growing up, I had the pleasure of two parents that were married and took care of me together. They made sure I was loved and paid close attention to me. As a little girl, they went to all my ballet recitals and encouraged me to be involved in school. They taught me wrong from right and helped me through many tough problems.
That is just wonderful. Do you believe that this careful upbringing caused you to have a secure attachment style? And how do you think that this helped you in your relationships?
Yes, indeed. My parents taught me that people have feelings and everyone should be loved. They taught me to listen to others and respect their feelings and believe that makes others see me as someone they can confide in and talk to with trust. In my relationship, George and I are able to talk with trust. In my relationship, me and George are able to talk about anything, including me having a feeling of insecurity, and I thank my parents for raising me in a way where I can properly communicate to people with confidence.
There you have it, folks. That goes to show that when parents or caregivers are attentive and loving towards their children, they tend to grow up with a secure attachment style, making it easier for them to deal with relationships more steadily and properly. And we'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to Everyday Encounters. This segment is about anxious/ambivalent. Anxious/ambivalent is the most complex of the four attachment styles. It is fostered by inconsistent treatment from the caregiver, which means sometimes the caregiver is loving and attentive, and sometimes the caregiver is rejecting and indifferent. For example, as a child, Cindy grew up with a mother that was on drugs. Sometimes her mother would shower her with gifts and take her to places. But over time, she would scream and tell her she hated having a daughter to care for her. Cindy responded to this behavior by sometimes dumping her boyfriend for a week and taking him back, showing inconsistent behavior. She knows that her boyfriend loves her, but she's scared he will cheat and leave her.
Hi, in Everyday Encounters, we have a scenario for you to help further explain the ambivalent and anxious attachment style, with the characters using Cindy and her boyfriend.
I saw you with that girl the other day. Who is she?
Oh, she's just a friend. No worries, she's from my history class.
Sometimes I feel like you flirt with girls and that you don't truly like me for me.
Cindy, I told you she's just a friend. Can you just chill?
We're over! I thought about what I said last week and I was really wrong. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
So, would you forgive me?
Don't I always?
Children who are ambivalently attached tend to be extremely suspicious of strangers. These children display considerable distress when separated from a parent or caregiver, but do not seem reassured or comforted by the return of the parent. In some cases, the child might passively reject the parent by refusing comfort or may openly display direct aggression towards the parent. According to Cassidy and Berlin, ambivalent attachment is relatively uncommon, with only 7% to 15% of infants in the United States displaying this attachment style in a review of ambivalent attachment literature. Cassidy and Berlin also found that observational research consistently links ambivalent insecure attachment to low maternal availability. As these children grow older, teachers often describe them as clingy and over-dependent. As adults, those with ambivalent attachment style often feel reluctant about becoming close to others and worry that their partner does not reciprocate their feelings. This leads to frequent breakups, often because the relationship feels cold and distant. These individuals feel especially distraught after the end of a relationship. Cassidy and Berlin describe another pathological pattern where ambivalently attached adults cling to young children as a source of security.
Today on Everyday Encounters, we will be talking about dismissive. Dismissive is a mode of relating instilled typically early in life by a disinterested, rejecting, or abusive caregiver, in which the individual later tends to dismiss others as unworthy and thus does not seek close relationships. Unlike people with fearful attachment styles, those with a dismissive style do not accept the caregiver's view of them as unlovable. What our source is telling us is when someone is abused by a caregiver, whether it be parents or other family members, the abused person will hold on to those moments forever, thus affecting his or her relationships. This person will see relationships as a waste of time because they are unworthy of relationships. Today with us on Everyday Encounters, we have Jamie, someone who has gone through a lot through her childhood and has held on to a dismissive attitude throughout her life. Thank you for being with us, Jamie. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've held on to this dismissive attitude.
Well, when I was young, my mother didn't pay attention to me. She'd always leave me at night, and when she was home, she would treat me as if I wasn't even there. After a time, I stopped trying to talk or interact with her. Today, as an adult, my relationships don't really last long, and I usually become very offended when people disagree with me. I usually just write people off and go into my own little world. I pretend I don't need people, like I didn't need my mother, but those are both lies.
Thank you, Jamie. In conclusion, people with a dismissive style of avoidant attachment tend to agree with these statements. I am comfortable without close emotional relationships. It is very important to me to feel independent and self-sufficient, and I prefer not to depend on others or have others depend on me. People with this attachment style desire a high level of independence. The desire for independence often appears as an attempt to avoid attachment altogether. They view themselves as self-sufficient and invulnerable to feelings associated with being closely attached to others. They often deny needing close relationships. Some may even view close relationships as relatively unimportant. Not surprisingly, they seek less intimacy with relationship partners, whom they often view less positively than they view themselves. Investigators commonly note the defensive character of this attachment style. People with a dismissive attachment style tend to suppress and hide their feelings, and they tend to deal with the rejection by distancing themselves from others.
Hello, and welcome back to Everyday Encounters. Today we've been talking about attachment styles, but I'm going to focus primarily on the fearful attachment style. Fearful is generally brought on by your first bond being unavailable or communicating in a negative way towards you. Generally happens in abusive homes, or generally found within children who are raised by nannies who have little to no interaction with their parents. It makes an individual feel unworthy, unloved, and that no matter what, they're not going to be wanted by anybody. And today as a special guest we have Chelsea, and she's going to share a little bit about her life and how she came from the fearful attachment style. Here we have Chelsea. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Now tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, my parents were pretty abusive for the first 5 years of my life, but then I was taken away into my grandmother's house, and she raised me. But she was a little senile, so she often mistook me for my mother, who had some behavioral issues. So she would punish me for things that I didn't do, but it's fine. It's never a thing.
All right. And how has this attachment style, how has it carried over into your adulthood?
Well, when my boyfriend drinks too much, he has a tendency to kind of smack me when I don't do the dishes right. But I guess it's my fault because I should have done the dishes better. So.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, it's fine.
And we'll be right. As you can see from Chelsea's story, a person with a fearful avoidant attachment lives in a oblivious state of being afraid of being both too close or too distant from others. They attempt to keep their feelings at bay but are unable to, and they can't just avoid their anxiety or run away from their feelings. Instead, they get overwhelmed by their reactions, often experience emotional storms, and most of these people become bipolar. They see their relationships from the working model that they need to go towards others to get their needs met. But if you get too close, they will hurt you. In other words, the person they want to go to safety for is the same person they're frightened to be close to. As a result, they have no organized strategy for getting their needs met by others. As adults, these individuals tend to find themselves in rocky or dramatic relationships, with many highs and lows. They often have fears of being abandoned, but also struggle with being intimate. They may cling to their partners when they feel rejected, then feel trapped when they are close. Oftentimes, the timing seems to be off between them and their partner. A person with a fearful avoidant attachment may even wind up in an abusive relationship, as our friend Chelsea has. But there is help. The attachment style you developed as a child is based on your relationship with your parent or early caregiver. Doesn't define your way of relating to those you love through your adult life. If you come to know your attachment style, you can uncover ways you are defining yourself from getting close and getting emotionally connected, and work towards forming an earned, secure attachment. You can challenge your defenses by choosing the partner with a secure attachment style and work on developing yourself in a relationship, or you can get therapy. So there is always help. Don't give up. People with losses or sexual abuse in childhood and adolescence often develop the fearful attachment style and tend to agree with the following statements. I am somewhat uncomfortable getting close to others. I want emotionally close relationships, but I find it difficult to trust others completely or to depend on them. I sometimes worry that I will be hurt if I allow myself to become too close to others. People with this attachment style have mixed feelings about close relationships. On one hand, they desire to have emotionally close relationships, while on the other hand, they tend to feel uncomfortable with emotional closeness. These mixed feelings are combined with sometimes unconscious negative views about themselves and their partners. They commonly view themselves as unworthy of responsiveness from their partners, and they don't trust the intentions of their partners. Similar to dismissive, avoidant attachment styles, people with a fearful avoidant attachment style seek less intimacy from partners and frequently suppress and deny their feelings. Instead, they are much less comfortable expressing.
Welcome back to Everyday Encounters. I'll be talking about how relationship styles affect conflict management. Conflict is inevitable in relationships. He says, she doesn't say what's really wrong with her, she says he never says much of anything, and so forth. The way conflict is managed has a lot to do with how you view others and how you view yourself. It also has a great deal to do with each individual's relationship style. For there to be conflict, there must be an expressed struggle, at least two interdependent parties, and either of the two parties must perceive incompatible goals. such as which restaurant a couple goes to for dinner or who gets to decide where to vacation this year. They must also perceive scarce resources, such as who eats the last banana, or more often, the less literal resources of power, self-esteem, or time. The way we deal with these conflicts vary from person to person. There are 5 styles of conflict that people engage in: competing, collaborating, avoiding, harmonizing, and compromise.
Oh my gosh, where is this guy? He's my husband. Man, just always late. Where have you been all day?
Where do you think I've been? I've been at work.
You're late. You're 30 minutes late all the time. You never do housework. You don't do anything.
Housework? I have a full-time job. I work all day.
And I have a job too. You're just so inconsiderate.
Yeah, well, I make more money, so your job doesn't really matter.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What we just saw was an example of competing. Competing is assertive and uncooperative, a power-oriented mode. When competing, an individual pursues his or her own concerns at the other person's expense, using whatever power seems appropriate to win his or her position. A person with this style of dealing with conflict tends to have a high concern for self and a low concern for others, similar to the dismissive relationship style.
I feel like you don't do your share of the work.
You know, I'd really like to talk about this, but I gotta go. It's girls' night. Is that a new haircut?
That was an example of avoiding. Avoiding is unassertive and uncooperative. When avoiding, an individual does not immediately pursue his or her own concerns or those of the other person. They try to avoid conflict in its entirety. They have a low view of self and of others, similar to the fearful style of attachment.
Man, my feet hurt.
Well, we got a lot of dishes to do, and I feel like you should carry more weight around the house, so...
You're right.
That was accommodating. Accommodating is unassertive and cooperative. When accommodating, or harmonizing, an individual neglects his or her own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. They have a low view of self and a high view of others, similar to the anxious or ambivalent style of attachment.
I don't think you do your fair amount of housework.
I feel like I shouldn't have to do more housework because I work more than you.
But I have a job also.
What is this really about?
I just feel underappreciated for the things I do.
I'm sorry. I'll make this better. It's okay. We'll come up with a solution together.
This was an example of collaborating. Collaborating is assertive and cooperative. When collaborating, an individual attempts to work with the other person to find a solution that fully satisfies all concerns. It involves digging into an issue to identify the underlying concerns of all and to find an alternative that meets all concerns. A person with this style of conflict management tends to have both a high view of self and a high view of others, similar to the secure style of attachment.
I don't think you do your fair share of the housework.
I feel like I shouldn't have to do as much since I have a full-time job.
Well, I have a job too, and it's only a part-time job, but I still work.
I'll do the dishes on Monday and Friday, and you could do them on Saturday.
That's fine.
All right, I can live with that.
Okay.
Compromising, like what we just saw, is intermediate in assertiveness and cooperation. In compromise, the objective is to find an expedient, mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. Compromising falls on a middle ground between competing and accommodating, giving up more than competing but less than accommodating. It addresses an issue more directly than avoiding, but it doesn't explore it in as much depth as collaborating. Because it is a middle ground technique, it doesn't outright match up with any attachment style. Although we tend to think of conflict negatively, it can be beneficial in many ways. When managed constructively, conflict can help us learn how to grow as individuals and to strengthen our relationships. Conflict allows us to deepen insight into our own ideas and feelings when we express them and get responses from others. It also allows us to consider points of view different from our own, and based on what we learn, even to change our own views. It can also enhance relationships by enlarging partners' understandings of one another. A lack of conflict doesn't necessarily mean a healthy relationship. Low levels of conflict could reflect limited emotional depth in a relationship or an unwillingness to engage in communications about differences. The way that these attachment styles affect our everyday lives make them a key part in understanding how to deal with everyday conflicts. It's important to recognize the attachment styles of others and ourselves in order to properly understand each other.
Today we talked about different attachment styles and how they affect our lives as adults. We thank you for watching our show, and we'll see you next time here on Everyday Encounters.
Oh my God, where is this guy? I'm gonna go off on him.
That was your cue.
Where have you been all day?
Man, I've been at work all day.
You late.
I'm late. I'm sorry.
I don't want to hear it. You never do your housework, Nick.
I'm working all day. I don't have time to come home and do housework.
Stop
Oh, man.
I'm gonna sneeze. I'm sorry. I know it's gonna happen.
And we have some special guests here to talk with us about how it affected their relationships with others and their families.
Sorry.